Some plucks play the bass note and other plucks play the chord and other plucks play the high note. So you have this like boom bam ba boom ba boom ba ba boom ba, and you're getting this kind of like immersive feel from a distance, close to you and above you, and it creates this really cool chord progression. Hey, what's up guys? This is Alex from AlexProMix. In this video, I'm gonna deconstruct a reggaeton Latin pop mix done in immersive audio. Let's jump right in. All right, so everything that I'm working with are mix stems. That basically means that a mix engineer produced and mixed the song in stereo. They sent it to a mastering engineer and they sent me the process stems. The process stems look like this. Basically, everything's already printed on these tracks as far as effects, delays, reverbs, and whatnot. And typically what I ask whenever clients send me stems is that the process stems match up to the stereo master so that when you put everything flat on the DAW and all the faders are flat, it's supposed to sound like the stereo master. Now there are different factors as to why it won't sound like the stereo master, such as if they took the song and sent it to a mastering engineer, that's going to change the tonality and density of the song. However, it's my job to recreate that sound and that sonic image. But for the most part, the stems were like really well done. You have some effects on here like delay, slap, room, depth, plate, large haul, and verb throw. So really well organized. And then I see silent, massive, pluck, guitars. All right, so let me tell you a little story here. So when I was working on this immersive mix initially for the client, I was really struggling with it because I began to spread things out in the room like I normally would, but it felt too like apart. It felt like too distant. It didn't have that compactness that the stereo mix had, in particularly with the plucks and the guitars and the keyboards. So I completely wiped out my initial idea as to spacing out the elements in the mix. And I began to go for a more intimate proximity of the instruments. So I basically panned these instruments in a different way that I would have with other mixes. And the thing about immersive mixing is that you don't necessarily rely on a mix bus compressor to glue your mix. You have to rely on the spatial elements and the panning position and distance to the listener to glue your mix. And so let me give you an example of what that sounds like. All right, so I noticed that these stems right here were all plucks. And in fact, let me play them for you, and they're all basically doing the same thing, but by layers of different instruments. Here we go, let's check that out. So where I would typically take some of the plugs and pan them hard to the speaker locations like front, side, rear, or quad, or overheads, it felt too distant. So what I ended up doing is like closing in the pan position from being wide to being more narrow. And you can see that here. For example, if I go ahead and just solo one of these stems at a time, you can see that reflected here. So it's definitely much more narrower than if it was spread out all the way to the wall. So that's the first one. Here's the second one. This one is spread out more to the rear. So that's coming behind me from like this direction, okay? Let's check out the next one. And these are all plugs, mind you. This one is panned to the sides, but to the height channels. So the height channels, the 4 height channels are projecting the sound above me. That sounds good. All right, we got a few more. This one is panned to the back and slightly elevated, and I'll show you what that looks like in the renderer. Okay, And I believe there is one more. Let's check that one out. And that one is just like straight between the left and center speakers, right and center speakers. So they're like almost like parallel directly like that. Cool. So when you combine all that together, you're going to see reflected on the renderer these different pan locations, which are all here. And I was very deliberate as to positioning them where I wanted to be, because some plucks play the bass note and other plucks play the chord and other plucks play the high note. So you have this like boom, bam, ba, boom, ba, boom, ba, ba, boom, ba, and you're getting this kind of like immersive feel from a distance, close to you and above you, and it creates this really cool chord progression. So that's the logic behind that. And again, something that I probably wouldn't have done until I felt that the mix was kind of getting away from me and I was losing a sense of the cohesiveness of the mix element. Let's go ahead and check out some other elements. Here we go. Let's go to the top.
Descontrolada, la nota le subió, ya no siente, ya fue suficiente. Ven, baila conmigo, todas tus cicatrices sanan con el tiempo.
If you want to learn more about immersive mixing, I invite you to the podcast by Recording Magazine, where I was featured to discuss all things about immersive audio. I'll leave a link to the podcast on the show notes below. Be sure to check out that podcast after this video. Let's jump back to the mix. All right, let's check out the guitars. These are guitarras distorsión, guitarra 1, 2, guitarra cuerdas número 2. That sounds so cool. I mean, the arrangement on this is really, really, really well thought and well done. I told Dynell, like, man, your stuff is banging, bro. All right, so this is the first guitar. It's panned to the front aux, which is left and right channels. And I'm feeding a little bit of it to the high front aux, okay? The next one is side aux, so these are the speakers at this angle. Okay, the next one is rear aux. So then the guitars I pretty much spread on front, side, rear. Cool, so those are using my object bed template, which basically means I just go to front aux, they go to left and right speaker, side aux, they go to left and right channels, rear aux, they go to the left. But then I added some additional objects to where I'm like spacing them in and racing the height channels. So let me go ahead and play that. So that's kind of coming here, but it's being triggered by all the speakers. That's why you guys are seeing meters on all these speakers. Okay, cool. And then we have one more, which would be the next stem. And that's basically opposite. So it's behind me, elevated. So it's basically like a complementary part. Cool, so then when you play them all together, you have the main guitars, which are hard pan to the speakers front, side, rear, and then you have these two additional guitars that are like here and here, elevated a little bit. Let's go ahead and check this out. All right, cool. And let's go ahead and check that out in the track. Here we go.
Todas tus cicatrices sanan con el tiempo. Tarde o temprano el dolor se lo lleva el viento. Deja que te me pegue y te castigue el cuerpo. Bebé, ven baila conmigo.
right, guys, so that's all the time that we have for this video. Hopefully you learned something interesting about panning positions and where to place things in the mix. If you're completely new to immersive mixing, I invite you to my channel. I got a bunch of videos here, and I'm also delivering mixes and services like that you can find on my website, AlexProMix.com. If you want to connect with me, shoot me an email or schedule a meeting. Thanks again so much for watching. I hope this was beneficial to you. Till next time, peace.